Good afternoon. We will call the Community Redevelopment Agency regular meeting to order. Today is October 26, 2022. The time is 6:07 p.m. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy.
Here.
Commissioner Botel.
Here.
Commissioner Lawson. Chair Pro Temp Lanier.
Here.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Present.
Also present, we have Attorney Chris Smith with Pittman Law Group, Jonathan Evans, CRA Executive Director, Scott Evans, Director of Planning and Development, Shirley Desir, CRA Clerk.
Thank you. We will have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Dr. Botel.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions, deletions, or substitutions for the items that are listed on this agenda this evening?
Madam Chair, just a modification to two items that are on the agenda, items 6C and 6D. Staff is recommending that there's an amendment to seek action from the board both on the attached resolution and the LOIs.
I'm sorry. We need more volume because I didn't hear anything he said.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Staff is recommending an amendment to items 6C and 6D to amend the action that is being requested to seek action from the board on both the attached LOIs and resolutions.
Question, you're seeking an amendment to take action on them?
That is correct. It was contemplated, councilperson or commissioner, that action would occur on both those items, but in the actual staff memo, it says that it's an update.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have any disclosures by commissioner staff for any of these items listed on the agenda this evening?
Yeah, but we haven't finished additions and deletions, and I wanted to make sure.
I asked you, were you finished? Go
Well,
ahead, sir.
Okay, so if we, Mr. Evans, what is, do we have a timeline on these items? 7 and 8?
A timeline for the purposes of execution of those items?
Correct.
I believe that one of those items was contemplated to get authorization to facilitate a tax credit program. So one of them, more so I think element 8, was time sensitive to the process. But there's not a timeline. I would have to look at the exclusive negotiation agreement, but it was contemplated that element 7 or element 8, the affordable development, was on a critical path to be able to facilitate an application if the board wanted to move forward with the project.
But there's no time specifically that's outlined in the imminent, I guess, in the imminent days to come on 7, element 7.
No, there's not.
Okay, well, I will ask that we take that one off. That's 6C.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to hear from Mr. McCoy, what would be the rationale for taking that one out?
Sure, well, I mean, I guess we might as well have the item if you want to hear me explain why.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm not in favor of taking it out then.
Neither am I.
She said what?
She's not in favor of taking it off.
Oh, okay.
Are there any disclosures regarding these items that are listed on the agenda this evening?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I have had numerous conversations with members of the development team of Tezrell prior to tonight.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I did have a conversation with Mr. Brown.
Okay. Any others?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I had a conversation with the Tezrell team.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve this agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy,
No.
Commissioner Botel,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
No.
Chair Pro Temp Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries with Commissioner Lawson and Commissioner McCoy dissenting.
Very good. We are at the consent agenda of our agenda this evening. Are there any comments for the consent agenda? Madam Clerk?
For Agenda 6A? I'm sorry.
For
Consent.
consent agenda. Are
No,
any
there are no public comments.
All right, routine board business. The consent agenda is approved by a single majority vote. Items may be removed for open discussion at the request of any Riviera Beach commissioner.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy, Commissioner Botel,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Pro Temp Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson. Yes. Motion carries.
We are at our regular agenda, and the item listed is for 6A, Madam Clerk.
Villa Laon's Townhouse Project Finding of Consistency. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Madam Chair, we have one public comment card.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. Do you have a clicker? Will you be moving the presentation along? or-
Yeah, actually.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Let me just introduce you.
Yes.
Staff is requesting that the board approve a resolution finding that this project is consistent with the agency's goals and objectives in the adopted CRA plan. This is the site plan for our townhouse project located on 11th Street, which will feature 12 units. And this is proceeded through the city's development review process. The CRA plan outlines the need to create infill housing and affordable housing projects, as well as improving our neighborhoods, and this project meets those goals. The next steps for the site plan are review by the City Planning and Zoning Board, and we anticipate that to happen in November, and then final approval by City Council, which is anticipated to be in January or possibly December. And Mr. Rick Gonzalez from REG Architects is here, and he has a presentation on the site plan for the board. Green button. Green button? Yeah.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It's great to be here again in Riviera Beach and give you an update on our beautiful project, our Phase 1 project, our 12 townhouses on 11th Street and on the corner of Avenue E. So I'll go ahead and give you a quick update. It's 2 buildings, 6 units each building. The corner units are bookend 3 stories, and then the 4 units in the middle are 2 stories. 3 bedrooms, 3.5 bath, and 2-car garage for the larger unit. 2-story, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, and 1-car garage for the smaller units. Should I point? Where should I point? Maybe point the wrong way.
Walter, can you, oh, there it goes.
Oh. Oops, it jumped the page. Let's see, here we go. Okay, it's working now, I think. Oh, it went all the way to the end. Okay. This is a rendering view from the street, from 11th Street. This is how you would see the buildings. We've used the Caribbean style, which is the Villa Leon's thought in the design process, and it's going to be very colorful, very nice home product, townhouse product. Here's the site plan. These are urban buildings, so there's on-street parking, there's stoops coming into the buildings on the front on the 11th Street, and then there's a service alley type road in the back to access the garages. These are the actual elevations of each building. The south elevation is the front elevation with the entry doorways, covered canopies. The rear north elevation with the 2-car garage option and the 1-car garage options, and then the 2 side elevations. These are the floor plans. The level 1 first floor on the bottom right, living areas and garages in the back. And then the second floor for both units with additional living spaces. And then bedrooms for the corner units, the three-story building with the two bedrooms on the top floor. Here's a view from the north, looking if you're driving up into the alley. And finally, this is a bird's eye view showing you the buildings. And hopefully we'll have a completion of phase one very quickly. We're starting to develop the plans. I have some progress sets over here. We should be able to go out to bid early next year and be under construction next year. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board in regards to
Yes,
this item?
Madam Chair, do we have any comment cards?
Oh, yes, comment cards.
Bonnie Larson.
Bonnie Larson, marketing, it's always good to have a name of a project that everybody can pronounce. Now, I wrote down ONZE, which is on here, but on there, I think it just said ONZ. So anyway, all right, is this, what was on this site previously? Was this Miami Subs or Miami Grill or something? Where is this? I didn't look it up, I'm not familiar with 11th Street. All right, 12 townhouses. Let's see, it says workforce housing, 8 of them, market value, 4 of them, budget $4,960,000. Development team, Ms. Jenkins, project lead, and then to be determined project liaison. What's the difference? Wouldn't the project lead be the liaison? Or why are we having a separate person be a project liaison other than Ms. Jenkins? We have the Pittman Law Group for the CRA and Michael Haygood, CDC. So we're recycling Mr. Haygood. He's no longer here. You notice that. So I'm wondering why he's on this project. Oh, and there were attachments. Said there were attachments, but they were not attached. So that would have been good to have seen that. This gentleman spoke very well, but he spoke a little too quick for me. But anyway, those are my questions. Why do we have both a project lead and a project liaison? And then why are we using Mr. Haygood? And about the name. Who chose the name? So I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Scott Evans, would you like to address at least one of those issues? Because I was curious about that as well, about the project liaison and the project lead.
Unfortunately, Ms. Anita Jenkins couldn't be here tonight. So I believe it's just a position that she may need as the project moves through implementation. As additional assistance to work with the home buyers. So that, I believe that would be what that position could potentially be used for.
Okay. That didn't tell me anything, but that's fine.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So it indicates that the price point is $275,000 as the target price. And my question is, how will that be considered affordable for people? Will there be some subsidy by the city, the county? How will people be able to manage that price point?
Yes, as far as the affordability goes, we'll have various grants that will apply to the individual applicants. In our previous affordable projects, they have received grants from banking institutions, from Palm Beach County, who has a variety of programs, and then the CRA also. So it's a combination that we apply to each individual applicant so that we're able to get the price of mortgage that they qualify for at a rate that they can afford. And it's done on an applicant-by-applicant basis.
Thank you. Well, I, for one, I'm happy to see these come to fruition. We've been looking at these for a while now, and it's good to know that there's movement forward, so thank you.
Any other questions from the board in regards to this item? Mr. Evans, Mr. Scott Evans, I'd ask you in the agenda review about the before the Planning and Zoning Board. Could you explain that?
Yes, the city code says that major projects that are in the downtown development districts of the CRA need to be reviewed by the CRA board and the Planning and Zoning Board. And that review, following that review, then it goes to the City Council for the final determination. So it's required to go to both boards. The code doesn't say which order. In the last couple of years, the order that we've been doing is CRA first and P&Z, although there's no specific requirement for the order they go in.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Do we need a resolution? I think the staff would like us to make a resolution.
There is,
Do that.
that's what they're requesting.
Yeah. So I move that we find this project consistent with the agency's goals and objectives as adopted by the CRA plan.
Second. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Commissioner Botel,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Pro Temp Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next item, 2600 Broadway.
2600 Broadway, the acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Madam Chair, we have one public comment card.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair and members of the board, at this time, I will ask that the Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Scott Evans, make this presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the CRA Board. At the Community Redevelopment Agencies, at the request of staff, has engaged the public-private partnership firm of Lambert Advisory for professional services to advise, prepare a development solicitation, and then assist in the selection and completion of a development agreement for the 2600 Broadway property. The property is located on the northeast corner of Broadway and Blue Heron Boulevard, and the building that was on site was recently demolished. The CRA Board has recommended the site for a mixed-use project, which would create a transformative redevelopment at this critical location in this major intersection in the city. The Lambert presented the summary of their research on the property and proposed next steps to the CRA Board on July 27th. The board directed them to develop a solicitation for this development opportunity, and the attached resolution approves the RFQ outline as developed and requests that the city's procurement department complete, package, and publish the RFQ for this development opportunity based on the outline before you tonight. The solicitation would be issued in two phases. Phase one would be a request for qualifications. The CRA Board would be presented with the rankings of the submittals we receive and would select up to 3 highest-ranking respondents who would be placed on the pre-qualified list. The respondents who are placed on the pre-qualified list would then be eligible to submit for phase 2 of the process. The requests for proposals from qualified applicants will be asked, they'll be asked to provide detailed proposal for the development of the 2600 site in phase 2. Following evaluation of those submittals, the rankings will be brought before the board for selection of a final developer and to negotiate the development agreement for consideration by the board. The proposed schedule for the RFP begins with publishing the RFQ in November, which is estimated to be the 3rd week. This would be followed by 60 days for the proposers to submit qualifications. The timeline anticipates that the CRA Board would complete phase 1 in March and make a final selection of a developer in July to complete the 2nd phase. Staff will work with Lambert Advisory to develop the draft development agreement in advance of final selection, and this will help us speed up the process to complete the project so that once the board selects the final developer in July, that we'll already have a draft agreement to begin negotiating with them. And the goal would be to bring that agreement back to the board for final approval in September. The RFQ will evaluate submittals based on experience of the proposer, financial capacity, the development team and personnel assigned to the project, their experience working in public-private partnerships, and their approach to providing equal business opportunity and opportunities for local community business. And Mr. Paul Lambert of Lambert Advisory is here to answer any questions that the board may have, and that concludes my presentation.
Is there public comment?
Thank you. We have public comment, please?
We have one public comment card. Bonnie Larson.
Bonnie Larson, 2600 Broadway, the former BB&T Bank. The city is asking the procurement department to complete the RFQ. Why have we put it out there if we don't have the RFQ ready first? They said it would be residential and commercial. I saw people on TV from the board stating there would be retail and then 72 apartment buildings in there. When was that decided? But it was on TV. It said there that the proposer can purchase that building from the CRA. Why would we purchase it? And it also said that it was sold to us for $2.5 million. I think it was $3.5 million. And it was a total disaster on the inside. It could not be rehabbed at all. But I think that figure is wrong. Okay, so from these proposers, you want a track record. You want it built and finally operational in reasonable time. What is reasonable time? That needs to be defined. There was a meeting. There's going to be a meeting for a pre-proposal conference, but it's non-mandatory. Why is it non-mandatory? There's an RFQ in short time frame with, let's see here. In same time. Then the article went on to talk about 1851 Broadway. It talked about an RFQ at City Hall, and it talked about revitalizing or refurbishing City Hall. Why were all those three properties included in this item? It said Riviera Beach has 500 employees now, and they want them to provide superior, it said that the building has superior coastal views. You can't see the beach from that property. The CRA engaged an architect to provide a vision for us development team. 8 stories, mixed use. No price or cost information directly related to the project is required. Why not? That's real important. Public records, it's public, can be public records exempt. Why? And they won't give information to the public until 30 days after the agreement is awarded. They're asking a lot of things, which is good. Requests for development, firms' qualifications, their previous experience doing this, and the CRA has a right to modify the number of solutions there. All right. The qualifications, let me just skip down here. There's a non-discriminatory clause, which is actually very discriminatory, because if you're a minority, you automatically get 15 points for that. So that's very discriminatory.
Thank you so much for your comments. Are there any questions from the board in regards to this item?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm wondering, I remember way back when, seems like years ago, maybe it is years ago, that we first saw this potential, the design is attached, this 8-story concept. Are we limiting proposers to 8 stories, or on that site, can we go higher than that? And I don't know if I should wait for an answer, I guess. Are we limiting proposers to that 8-story limit?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Currently the zoning on the site, the zoning district allows up to 8 stories as a maximum. On that particular site, we might be limited to just 6 only at the current time. However, before this project comes forward, we are anticipating bringing you new amendments from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. Those amendments will put the maximum height on the property to 10 stories, but they're not approved yet. So we use the 8 stories as a guide to the developers, because that's the maximum allowed in that particular zoning district at this time.
So this doesn't at any point come under that MEHOP where you can do 20, or even, or rather the MEHOP or the IHC, the PUD. None of those two things affect this property?
No, the IHC PUD is reserved for projects that are 2 acres.
2 acres, right. So there's no way to go higher than 8 stories as you see in the future?
I don't see, yes, I believe in the future it will be allowed to go to 10, but that's, of course, contingent upon city council approval.
And did I hear it said that that a developer could opt to purchase the property from the CRA?
Yes, the description of the property and the proposals suggest that a developer could propose to purchase the property or propose to long-term lease it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so just for understanding, Mr. Scott Evans, you're saying that the density on this parcel, the max right now is 6 stories?
Yes, it's in a zoning district that allows 8, but this particular location is limited to 6. Yes, sir.
Okay. And with the amendment, with the IHC PUD and the MEHOP, that does not affect this parcel? Are you, because I thought
That's
we had that
correct.
discussion that this was incorporated into that.
No, the IHC PUD, because this parcel is just a little under an acre, it wouldn't qualify because the IHC PUD only applies to 2 acres or larger.
Madam Chair, if I may, to that point as well.
Yes, go ahead.
If there is parcel assembly that occurs that is contiguous to this parcel, then by fact of the site being 2 acres, then that would be something that is viable. But it has to be a situation where the parcel where there is 2 acres of land that's available for development.
Okay. Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
And then, Mr. Jonathan Evans, can we get a quick understanding and overview of I understand there was an unsolicited proposal presented for this parcel. Can we just give a quick overview of the steps to take for the unsolicited proposal when it comes to these items?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, sir.
if I may, we do have information that was provided. It's available on our website as well as it relates to the ordinance. But what it requires is a situation whereby a proposal comes in. There is a requirement of a $25,000 check to facilitate the review of the unsolicited proposal. If the proposal is reviewed, those monies from the check are utilized for the purposes of reviewing the solicitation, and then the city then has to go through a procurement process if it deems the solicitation to be a valid, credible solicitation. So there is a process that is in place. Was an ordinance that this board adopted, I want to say almost about 1.5 years ago, with regards to the acceptance of unsolicited proposals. But as staff has communicated in this item, our intent is to release this solicitation probably in the next 2 to 2.5 weeks. This solicitation should be out on the streets.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
And just to follow up with that, with your unsolicited proposals, with the item that we have, it states that it's P3 option and just purchased by owner. Are those both required $25,000 fee to review?
I don't have the policy and the ordinance in front of me, but I can certainly provide you a response in writing concerning that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So what does that mean? We all got a copy of an unsolicited proposal for this particular property. And they were talking about P3s in the actual 2020 resolution. So it appears that the person or the entity does not have to have the $25,000 if it's not a P3. Now, I need to get some clarity in terms of that, because although, how do we know it came in? What's that process? I'm trying to figure out if somebody solicited or put a bid in, or what they call a proposal, unsolicited. How do we know that happened?
Madam Chair, as it relates to the code and what the code speaks of, it's a situation where the manager determines if the proposal meets the merits that are prescribed in both the statute as well as the ordinance, as well as the $25,000 check to facilitate that. The CRA is bound by the same procurement rules and policies that the city has to follow. So there is, if there's a situation where a proposal is deemed viable, then there would be a notification that would be provided to the board after the consultants have taken a look at the solicitation and made a determination that it is a valid solicitation. So we have had a couple of solicitations that have come in over the years, but they have not made it to the second step of the process because there's a lot of information that is missing out of the solicitation for the purposes of deeming it a credible and viable solicitation document. So those we have communicated to respondents to wait for the solicitation process because that's the cleanest and best way, because it prescribes exactly what the city or CRA or the utility district for that matter is considering to do with that site. What is the expectations of development? What is the relationship as it relates to management, et cetera? So it is certainly staff's recommendation that, you know, when you have these solicitation documents that are so close to going out that you allow for them to let and be a competitive process versus a situation where you accept unsolicited proposals. If they're viable proposals, we definitely do look at them and then process them accordingly.
Okay, I think that what I'm gonna need to have is a copy of what has to be in a proposal to be able to be passed on to us. You know, a list of, do they have this? Do they have that? Is this a part of it? I mean, because you say that it doesn't work, but we need to know what checklist you use to be able to get to that understanding. Can you provide that to us? I mean, I'm of course not now, but I'm just saying.
Madam Chair, that would be a pretty, because it varies. It could be an unsolicited proposal on purchasing a vehicle. It could be an unsolicited proposal on purchasing a widget. So it varies from all different, you know, levels on the spectrum. We can have conversations with legal and see and procurement and find out what is the framework. But certainly following what the statute is the best way to prescribe the statute and the code, the best way for respondents to be able to put together an unsolicited proposal.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to have because, I mean, I remember there are policies that come before. I mean, even take, for example, when people come to developmental services and they say, okay, we're gonna start this business, and people come back and say, well, I didn't know I need to have that. I didn't know I need to have that. So you have to have a checklist of things that we know that if you don't have all 20 of these, then it goes back, type of thing. So what I'm looking for, I'm sorry, go ahead, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, yes, Madam Chair.
You finish your sentence. I just wanted to make a comment to what you're asking for.
Okay, so if it is for, I think my issue here is, how do we know that the guidelines, because we don't know what they are, have been met to be able to pass it on to us? I think that's where I have the question at. You know, if somebody submitted a proposal unsolicited and they have to have 7 of these elements to be able for it to be passed to us, then I want to know what those 7 elements are. And I understand that it may be different for a vehicle, it may be different for a property, it may be different for a, pair of shoes. But it should be something that tells us that they went through the proper channels, and the proper channels is these guidelines that they had to meet.
And Madam Chair, if I may, with
Madam
respect.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I hear what you're asking for, and I think that's why it's important for them to follow the solicitation when the solicitation is put out, because it prescribes all of that. The exact same things that you're looking for. Now, I understand they're trying to do an unsolicited proposal, but essentially they're asking for solicitation. You're basically asking for solicitation because it will outline all of the things that they need. And then I just think that for the board to get to that level of getting the solicitations or needing that, I think that is, I don't believe that is not something we should really be getting into, because that basically you're talking about the people who are involved in the solicitation panel.
Yes, and I understand that. I'm not talking about this particular 2600 property. I'm talking about just in general. If somebody says, listen, I have a proposal that I want to, a property that, say we bought the subway, and I have this idea for that property. There has been no conversation about what we're going to do with it. You know, maybe there's nothing on the horizon in terms of an RFP. How do you determine if we look at that?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
And the attorney wants to opine, and that's why it's always staff's recommendation to wait till the solicitation, because there's no ambiguity, there's no confusion with regards to what the city is looking to do. An unsolicited proposal doesn't mean that you bypass the solicitation process. It means that you have activated the solicitation process. So we, as a city, have a window after we review the solicitation, and if we say that this is a viable solicitation, we then have to put it out for public participation in the solicitation process. So it jump starts it, but it doesn't bypass the process.
Right.
The concern also for that person that puts in the unsolicited proposal is that invariably, if you go in, you're going to miss something, or you may miss a critical component. So persons that we've talked to, we said we will outline all the things that we're looking to accomplish in these solicitations, so it's clear as day and there's no ambiguity and confusion. When we have the solicitations that go through these particular process, and you mainly find the unsolicited solicitations that come for development projects. You don't see them for others, but the statute, and Attorney Smith prescribes exactly what needs to go as well as the code. Attorney Smith, you wanted to speak on?
Yes, so I'm trying to get an understanding. You're talking about the procedure that when the unsolicited comes to you as a council person, or when it comes to the city?
Both.
Both. Okay, and that's something we'll work with Ms. Wynn's office and purchasing to get you, because I hear you clearly. You're saying you want to know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so that they can hit those points before they even get the process started.
Right, and I think that additionally, if the whole thing is that we're going to put it out to bid anyway, then what's the purpose of an unsolicited proposal?
As Mr. Evans just started, it kind of jump starts. It may be something that you weren't thinking about putting out to bid. It may be a project or a piece of property that's sitting there that someone says, you know what, I got a good idea for it. Let me put in a solicitation for it. And then that will jumpstart us, start thinking about, okay, well, this is a good idea. Now let's put it out for everyone to bid on this if that's something we want to do. So a lot of times it's just someone from the public that sees something that we haven't even started thinking to develop yet.
And to pick up on that point, also with an unsolicited proposal, when we look at the unsolicited proposals, we also are looking at, even though a proposal comes in, it doesn't mean that it's a good proposal from the standpoint that it may ask for things that are outside of the city's control and purview. It may be, if somebody's asking to build a 100-story tower on 2600 Broadway, that's something that we know is not compatible, that there would be issues as it relates to zoning. It would be issues concerning the comp plan, and, you know, there's not parsley assemblage to be able to facilitate. So there's certain things that we look at to say, you know, is this close to being, or is this something that's a bona fide proposal? And that's why we try to encourage persons that, you know, to wait till the solicitation, unless it's something that is outside of what we would normally be looking to solicit.
No, I think that I brought the question up because I did get an unsolicited proposal that came to the city and came to council people, and I was just trying to figure out what that process was. And if the resolution says that it doesn't have to be a P3 for the 25,000, then I was trying to figure out how is it that we didn't see it, and what were the guidelines that said that it doesn't go any further. That is what my question is. And it doesn't have to be for 2,600. It could be for any piece of property or anything that's in the city. How does that work? How do we get to see that if it's not being sent to us? So I think that what I need to have is some guidelines in terms of, you know, I'm looking at the resolution in terms of what happens, but I need to have some guidelines to tell me that this is what happens when we do this, and if it doesn't have this particular component, then we have to kick it back. That's what I'm asking for.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, to just piggyback on some of the comments you made, In regards to the unsolicited proposal, is there an expectation of a fee if they're putting an unsolicited proposal for a vehicle? If they want to solicit that will buy a vehicle, they have to pay that same $25,000 fee?
I was using that as a point of just reference, not necessarily that there would be a situation where that happened. That was just a point of discussion. But if it's an unsolicited proposal, we would follow what the code as well as what the resolution speaks.
And I guess that's what my colleague was asking, just for clarity in regards to the code as to what's the expectation, because essentially what we're telling individuals is that we have a policy for unsolicited proposals, but we prefer that you don't even submit them because we just want you to wait on the solicitation to go out. So it makes no sense to have a policy in the first place. The second portion of that is also in reference to the lot that we gifted or gave to Found Care with a 99-year lease. Did that come as an unsolicited proposal? Was that RFP completed? Or what were the steps that we gave that to them? Because essentially, it would be the same thing. And did they pay the $25,000 fee to actually obtain that property? And then once they submitted it, did we put it out for RFP to match it? So I guess those would be the concerns, where making sure that the policy's in place and that we understand it completely, so that if something comes to us, that we're not blindsided when somebody wanting to invest or develop our community says, hey, we submitted this to Mr. Evans, but we didn't hear back, or he didn't give us the policy or the procedure. And you're saying that our preference would be for us to wait on solicitation, but there's a lot of property that we don't have in the pipeline to where we're going to develop, where other partners may want to come in and assist us with developing. So I don't want to have somebody waiting on a parcel that has no option of being developed when there's somebody that wants to invest dollars into our community. So those are just some of the concerns, and I know that you're going to follow up with the documentation to kind of give us the policy, but it's just understanding what steps we need to take. So first, I guess, addressing the Found Care, and then also making sure that we get that information and policy so that we can be clear with the unsolicited proposals.
Yes, so I think that's what I'm asking. I'm asking for if we have them, the internal policy and procedures for unsolicited proposals, because what we have is an outline, but not like how it's actually done. And I think that's probably my biggest question, is actually how the process works.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
I believe we may have sent you all copies of some correspondence that has all that information, but I will have a discussion with staff and send all that information to the board with regards to the unsolicited proposal, as well as what the statute says concerning unsolicited proposals.
Yeah, and I think that the question for me also was that I got that one proposal, so I'm thinking that how many were sent? I mean, how many have been sent over the years that I've never seen? So I think that particular proposal, you're not saying we do it or not, I'm just saying that particular proposal piqued my interest in terms of what happens when unsolicited proposals come to the city.
Just a quick follow-up, Ms. Evans, about the item with Found Care. How did we handle that process? And I know that's not germane to the topic, but I want to confirm before we move forward with this RFP solicitation, how do we proceed? So did we do that same process, or what were the steps we took?
Madam Chair, I'd like to put all that information in writing because
Sure.
It's a very complicated process and there was multiple facets associated with it. But there was also a procurement process that did occur, and Deputy City Manager McBride can speak to that process that was followed with regards to Found Care. But I can put that into writing to the board so you have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
just to be perfectly clear, it doesn't matter, I think I hear you say, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter whether somebody submits an unsolicited proposal or not. You're saying you have to go through this process. The thing about the unsolicited proposal is that it triggers this process. But no matter what happens, no matter what the proposal is about, it has to go through this RFQ process in order to be legal. Is that what you're saying?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, you have to, we put this process in place because what was happening is we would get solicitations, and then in order for us to review the solicitation, in most cases, you have to have a third-party entity review those solicitations to determine what are some of the elements and components associated with it. For example, if it's a highly technical situation such as water treatment, there is certain capacity that we have internally, but we would have to facilitate an external review. So we didn't want to have a situation where, and that's why we put that 25,000, and most government entities have that you can hire outside entities to review that, and then after it's reviewed and it's made a determination that, hey, this is a viable solicitation, this is something that falls in with where the city or CRA wants to go, then it goes through a bona fide solicitation process. Because there's even some situations where you can get a solicitation, and the solicitation may be something that, I want you to give me all this. Well, that's something that we're not going to do as a city, so it's not a bona fide solicitation. So there's a process that goes through, procurement's involved, legal's involved, administration's involved. It's not a situation whereby the manager by himself or by herself says, I like this proposal, I don't like this proposal. It's a collaborative and it's ever moving. I think what's best suited for this type of item is that there's a conversation and discussion, maybe as a discussion item with the board to talk about the process, the unsolicited proposal process or what have you. But I can tell you that in this particular situation, or when it comes to development projects, I believe that this board would want staff to encourage people to go through the prescribed process that we have vetted through Franklin Lee, Joe Goldstein, our attorney, our procurement director, and that's to ensure that there's not a situation where there's a contested protest on a solicitation. That's why we go through this prolonged process. So it's intended to protect the city and to make sure that we have a bona fide process, that everybody has all the information and working off the same sheet of music. And that's the intent behind when we have those conversations with developers. We're going to be putting these things out, but we prefer that they wait to go through that. But we have a process that if we do get an unsolicited proposal, what does that look like? So we'll schedule an opportunity for a staff presentation. We'll dual present from the Pittman Law Group as well as the City of Riviera Beach and the Procurement Department to walk through that process. And I think we'll have Joe Goldstein and some other folks involved in the discussion on the item.
Just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
And also to be clear about this, the only way a developer could put something other than a 6 or an 8-story building there would be to amalgamate any surrounding property such that the resulting property is 2 acres or more. And then at that point, they could use the IHC PUD to gain more density and intensity. Am I right?
I defer to the planner, but I think so, yes. Mr. Evans?
Yes, as soon as you have 2 acres, then you can apply for that.
Okay.
Follow, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Scott Evans, the acreage there, so within the request for qualifications, are we looking for those type of presentations of possibly soliciting or procuring the surrounding properties to allow for us to have a higher density? What exactly are we going to be looking for in response to the RFQ that's going out before the RFP is actually decided on?
The RFQ is designed to identify qualified developers. It doesn't focus so much on the project that they're proposing. It's designed to find developers who are capable and have the financial capability to deliver a project. And then once they're qualified, then the qualified proposers would then be able to make that type of submittal. And I would say a submittal that put together more property would likely have the advantage of being able to propose more of a project than one that didn't. But the RFQ is simply looking for a developer for this site since we don't have control of any other property.
Okay, so in the event that the qualifications come back for just this site and they present and propose on this, and the additional property or real estate comes available, will we have to go back out and solicit an RFQ process? Will we have to confirm that they can go from these 6 to 8 stories to possibly 12, 15? What would be the steps of doing that in the event that the additional real estate is procured or secured?
Well, I would have to defer partially to our attorneys, but I would think that once a developer has been selected, that the opportunity then becomes to make some changes to the project, because they were selected based on their qualifications and then based on their quality proposal. And then if that time, once they were selected by the board, it is expected that as you go through the process, some changes would occur to a project, and that might be a change that could happen once a developer has been selected, if the city had more property or perhaps the developer did.
Thank you.
So, yeah, when we move forward, Mr. Evans, we do need to have something on the CRA agenda that discusses this, because I never thought about unsolicited proposals until I got one. So I really would like to know what that process is, and how does it move from your office to the board? Yes, sir.
Just as a point of clarity, it wouldn't get to the board until you went through the bona fide procurement process. So it wouldn't be a situation that would get to you until there was a situation that you were looking to approve it. Because it is protected information until that process, and I believe one of the speakers said, if there's trade secrets, if there's information, there is some protections that are provided for that solicitation until you go through a bona fide process, because if that solicitation is provided to the board and somebody else gets it when we go through that procurement process, they can conceivably take trade secrets and information that may be in the unsolicited proposal. So it will not get to you until it's contemplated that there would be action. So it would be the same process that you normally go through for procurement, that it's sealed until it's received, or that 30-day time frame for review is expired and then available for public consumption.
Okay, yeah, that's a discussion item. We need to bring that back, because I'm really not clear about how that works. I think that I am, but I'm not sure. So we need to, instead of going through this tonight, we need to definitely bring this back for a discussion, because the way that it stands, it seems that there's just no, there's no use for an unsolicited proposal, because it's going to go through the same process anyway. So that's what it appears to me. So maybe I need to get some clarity in terms of how that works. So if there's no more questions, we will move on from this item.
Well,
We need to vote on this item.
yeah, I think we need to, I think we need to vote on it, and I think my sense about it is.
Can you all hear me?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Well, what I was going to ask is if Mr. Evans is going to be bringing this stuff back to us, can he do some research on the other municipalities and see how they handle their unsolicited proposals as well? Because with our construction company, I've never seen, you can't give out people's proposals to others prior to the solicitation being put out. I mean, that's actually, that's an issue. So I don't think what he's saying is any different from what is expected. But if, that helps the conversation and the explanation of it all to get some information from other municipalities and see how they handle their unsolicited proposals as well, would be helpful.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
My concern about not voting on this tonight is that it only delays the development even further. If we approve this resolution to move forward with issuing this RFQ, doesn't it move the process along, which would benefit the person who provided the unsolicited proposal? Because whether or not we have all the information as to what process the city manager goes through in order to bring it to us, it still has to go through this procedure. So in my mind, it's better to just get it done. So in any case, I'm going to make a resolution. I'm going to make a motion that we approve resolution number 2022-20.
Second, and I have a question. I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
What I just stated a minute ago has nothing to do with this item in terms of moving it along. That unsolicited proposal information is just a conversation or just a memo for me anyway. That has no impact on my decision tonight. So my second stands and I'm ready to vote.
Okay. That is fine. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any other questions before we call the vote?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Is it possible to add a provision into the RFP, the RFQ, Mr. Evans, Scott Evans, in regards to if the developer is willing to acquire the additional acreage or lands that they can take advantage or utilize the ICPUD?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, go ahead.
we can probably do something with respect to encouraging parcel assembly, but the concern is almost contract zoning, right? A situation whereby you stipulate in the solicitation that if you get this, then you'll, because the PUD, you still have to go through a public process. You still have to do, so there's no guarantee because it's a legislative decision the board would make, but we can put some language that effectively looks favorably on those types of situations. But we will get with legal and procurement and make sure that we can do that.
Before they vote.
On that, in the solicitation.
So, yes, follow-up. So whatever is legally going to cover us, just to have that information out, so that as it goes out to the market, that developers can see that there is potential for the growth that we're trying to bring to the city. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So what we'll do is look at that information as well. But at the same time, when we approve this evening, we certainly would like to have a timeline of when this goes out. I mean, you can say that, I think I've heard mid-November, but give us a timeline so that we'll know exactly how this process is going to occur.
Madam Chair, to that point, worst case scenario, and I would say that we would be able to have this solicitation out on the streets by November 18th, worst case. Procurement has it. I believe Mr. Goldstein is going to be reviewing it. I believe Franklin Lee is going to be looking at it. And then there's some conversations that procurement wants to have with Mr. Lambert. So we've got the shell of the document now working through it. But worst case scenario, the 18th would be the release date.
Very good. Madam Clerk.
We have 4 public comment cards.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, very good. Go ahead, public comment.
Bonnie Larson, J.B. Dixon, Erica Davis, Doretta Polk. Bonnie Larson. Not on this item.
Is that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
is that for public comment or that for
Oh,
this
I'm sorry.
particular item?
I'm sorry. That's it.
Wrong item.
All right, very good. You can go ahead with the vote.
Commissioner Botel,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Pro Temp Lanier,
Yes,
Chair Miller Anderson. Yes. Motion carries.
very good. Item 6C.
LOI Element 7, the acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Madam Chair, we have 4 public comment cards.
5.
Okay. Mr. Scott Evans.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
is Mr. Lawson is gone, is he
We're
coming
gonna
back?
have a quorum
We don't have a quorum.
No,
in person.
you don't have a quorum.
No, they have to have an in-person quorum.
Oh, for God's sake. Is he coming back?
Oh. We're gonna have to recess for about 15 minutes until we get our in-person quorum back.
Looks like he took his stuff with him.
Sorry? Yeah. No,
If we're not gonna, you can't do any action without a quorum.
so we can do public comment, though. I wouldn't risk it.
Yeah,
We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna have to,
the issue.
huh?
You don't have to do public comment.
Okay, we're gonna have to adjourn this meeting. We have lost our in-person quorum for this evening. Actually, we've lost two council people, Councilman Lawson and Councilman McCoy for the CRA meeting, and because we've lost our quorum for this evening, we will have to adjourn.